interested in the UFO subject then?
Look, growing up, I always had this feeling that things weren't quite as it seemed. I was sent off to Sunday school at Kingscliff, and the only little church that had a Sunday school, and it was to sort of allow us to know the basics of a Christian upbringing. I still don't today know what my father or mother were as far as their religion went, but it was that was for the basics. And then certain things connected with me with that, but other things seemed quite odd, and I never was sort of openly out there or said anything to anybody because I hated thinking that I might have hurt their feelings. But I just felt certain parts of the Bible didn't seem to connect. I always felt there was someone around me, like guides and things. And I think after that happened to me, I had a wider sort of feeling about it. It sort of, and the fact that growing up I'd seen, I was with my family and actually saw a UFO over Tweed Heads, or on my way into Tweed Heads from Kingscliff where I lived, up over Boyd's Bay Bridge and across. There's a huge, I think they call it Razorback, but there's a huge big volcanic plug there that houses are built on. And as we came from Kingscliff Way to Tweed, up above this big plug off in the distance, we thought we were watching a comet because it had the heavy dense head and then the tail, and it was travelling sort of, in an arc sort of shape, direction, and then all of a sudden it went zigzag, zigzag, gone, and we thought, whoa, what was that? So my mum and dad was there, my younger brother and myself, and so that was one little episode. But then later, after I got married, before we had the children, we'd gone out to a station, a big property out at Kuna Station. It was called at Wilcannia, and we had been out there for about 10 days. But the last night I'd cooked dinner for the owner, and there was about 9 of us standing outside, and there appeared these lights above us, and they were close enough we thought we should have heard some sort of motor or engine or whatever, but there was nothing. And one of the gentlemen, who was my husband's cousin, who was a very strict Catholic, said, if it's not the Bible, it doesn't exist. And that was it. He was going to stick to that no matter what. And they said, well, what do you reckon it is? And he said, it could be weather balloon, it could be this, it could be that. But it just seemed to hover above us because we were outside in the open. It was winter time and the sky was very clear. Lots of different lights, some of them were different colours, and no particular shape. You couldn't see a shape of anything, just these lights. And we were just standing there, and the owner, who was a huge big man of about 6'7", 6'8", he said, you don't worry about those things, they're around all the time. We see them all the time, just ignore it and it'll go away. And his wife had told me that in summertime it got so hot out there that he would often lay out in the open, and those things are out there quite often. They'd often see things, but she was sworn to secrecy because he didn't want people to think they were idiots or, off their rocker or whatever. So she only discussed it with the lady next door, and they were 96,000 acres, this property. So huge area, but it was right next to White Cliffs, which has quite a reputation about lights and things. So but these lights stayed there for quite a while, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, they were gone, and there was no breeze, there was no way that, and we sort of turned to Michael then and said, well, okay, explain that. And he said, don't know, it's not in the Bible, it doesn't exist. That was all his answer was for everything. The night before, I had stayed and looked after Michael's daughter, who was about 7. I don't know why he brought her out there, but anyway. And we had a little dog with us, and the dog was barking, and when I went to the door, we were staying in the shearers' huts, and when I went to the door, I could see these lights off to the distance, which I thought might have been a kilometre away in our measurements these days. And the lights were blinking on and off, and they looked like, I thought, oh, they're over there, they've shot a fox or something, and they've stopped to skin the fox, because they used to sell the skins to a fur company in Sydney. And the blinking, I just thought, oh, there's trees over there, and the lights are in behind the trees. And then when it left and moved, again, it was blinking like they were going uphill, down dale, you know, away. So I left it at that, but the dog was really bark. And then after it left, he stopped. And then the next morning, a couple of the guys had headed off in the other direction. They'd gone off to shoot rabbits, I think, that night. And they talked about some lights they'd seen, and it was in a whole other direction. And they sort of thought, oh no, we shouldn't be shooting here because there's a house over there. And one of the guys said, no, there's no houses around here. This is complete open space, you know. And then the lights moved, and the guy sort of grappled for his camera and didn't get his camera out quick enough, but he said it would have just shown up like a bunch of lights from a house. So they'd seen something the night before, I'd seen something the night before, and when I walked out in the morning, these trees I thought were out there didn't exist, the hills didn't exist, it was flat country and nothing. And when I'd spoken to the guys and said, was anybody off in that direction? No one had been in that area at all. So what the lights are, I don't know. But there's just been little things over the years that have sort of made me stop and think that there is other things. There seems to be a thing in our family that we've sort of, I don't know, carried a gene or whatever, but we're all a bit psychic. We're all mediums, all of the girls in the family, the boys not so. But leading back to my grandmother, as far as I can see, people talked about her as being a little bit odd, a little bit strange and all of that type of thing. But we've had some really interesting predictions happen in the family, and I'm happy to talk about those. But I think that when you see things a bit differently and when you understand that you're given stuff, you're inclined to believe it after you've had proof of those things. And there's often been times that my daughter has seen unusual people that are dressed in certain skin type suits and things like that, and no one else has seen them there, but she's been able to see that. And then when that gentleman has seen her seeing her, he's just split and disappeared. So, she was only about 10 at the time when that happened at a kid's birthday party. And this fellow had sort of vents on his suit and seemed to be covered in like a skin of some sort, and thought he was invisible until he realised my daughter Corinne could see him, So there's been a few things. We came back from Papua New Guinea, from being posted over there with the military, and we stayed in a big hotel in Brisbane right on the river. And Corinne was there one night at the age of about 11, and she saw one of those big, I'm trying to think what they call them, big fireball, and it had come from the other side of the river over near South Bank and come zooming across, and it was sort of ducking and diving around, and then it somehow or other must have realised she was seeing it, because it sort of stopped and then went whoosh over towards the window, and where her face was up against the window, this thing came straight up to the window, frightened the living daylights out of her, and then it went zoom and went straight down. And because there was no balcony at this place, she was sort of trying to see, but it had disappeared. But she said that was probably about 1 metre across, and my son was in the room at the time, and he was busy watching TV, and she was trying to get his attention to show him what she'd seen. But yeah, little bits and pieces like that along the way. There's just been some strange things. I used to see things out at sea that didn't connect with anything. Living up on the hill at Kingscliff, you could see a lot. We could see all the way to the Gold Coast one way, and if you leaned out around the balcony, you could see the light from Byron Bay Lighthouse blinking at night. So we had a great expanse of area to see, and you'd often see strange things in the sky at night, from that vantage point.